I've just hit the record button.
Okay.
So we're live. It's great to see everybody, and I thank y'all for getting on tonight and really for responding to everybody's posts in the forum. It's been really good. I did hear from a couple other people who could not be with us tonight that who apologize for that, but they're willing to contribute. And I think they'll be part of things going forward. That was really good. That was encouraging to hear from other folks. Some really good ideas thrown out there, y'all. I mean, just kind of brainstorming the discussion forum. There's been some great ideas thrown out, and so I guess tonight, what I'd like to do is, let's talk about some of these and try to come up with three. And then, as the assignment says, that it wants us to state in what state are we interested in this particular policy issue, and then why do we care about this as a team? So there's been a couple of issues that have been thrown out. There's a number of policy issues in the news lately. All good stuff. Of course, the one I threw out was about telepsychiatry. I live in a rural area of Pennsylvania where, we definitely have some issues with regards to the use of telepsychiatry here. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has rather quirky rules about when you can and can't use telepsychiatry, and it would be, to me, it would be interesting from a policy perspective. Richard Townsend had a great idea talking about the opioid epidemic. I'm sure that's something that affects all of us in each of our states and areas. And probably from a policy perspective, I'm sure that each state most likely has its pros and cons when it comes to how they're dealing with opioids. Let's see, what's another one? There was, Monica Wright put out one that had to do with Medicaid and the work requirement tied to Medicaid. That's an interesting policy. Hadn't really thought about that one, but that's interesting.
Someone I read about the tobacco and the vaping industry.
Right. I threw that one out there because I get this. I subscribe to this Kaiser Health News newsletter. I get it every morning, and there's been a couple of things in there about, especially vaping with people under 18 with youth. And it's funny, in Pennsylvania, they just changed the law. It used to be that you could buy tobacco and vaping products if you were 18 or older. Now it's 21. And there's people in the state legislature that are griping because they're saying they're going to lose all this money in tax revenue in it. So it's a really, it's sort of an interesting debate. So that I threw that one out there because I thought it's interesting and it's been in the news lately. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I like the telemedicine. That's interesting. I haven't really worked with that. So I'd be interested to learn more about that too through this project, I think. I'm not sure.
What's interesting, one of the things that on a state level for, as far as the policy goes, in Pennsylvania expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. And what that did was create a series of these fiscal intermediaries that manage the Medicaid for so many number of counties across the state. And each one has its sort of different rules when it comes to providing services for their members. So it's not uniform. what's funny is that these companies, these intermediaries, they're basically just an insurance company, but they think they're regulators. So there's this constant that's in there. Now, I don't know where all of y'all live, but maybe some of your states expanded Medicaid, maybe some of yours didn't. I was telling Richard Townsend, I moved here from Mississippi 4 years ago, and where Mississippi did not expand Medicaid. And I'm telling you, it was so easy to get things done in Mississippi because of that. Here in Pennsylvania, it's a nightmare. I mean, working with these intermediaries is a nightmare. Everything from actually getting paid to negotiating rates to credentialing providers. It's a disaster. So
It maybe needs some regulation or like some consolidation, maybe.
perhaps, but it might be interesting to look at that in anybody's state to see again how does that work? How did that particular state set it up, and what are the merits and the shortcomings of that from a policy perspective? I don't know. Thoughts?
Georgia is another state that did not choose to expand their Medicaid coverage, and so much like what you saw, things have kind of stayed status quo here. We have not had to deal with any new intermediaries, although Georgia does have a number of different flavors of Medicaid, depending on the choice of the policyholder.
Okay.
They have like the Medicaid HMO, as well as just straight Medicaid.
I'm not sure about New Jersey. That's where I live.
Okay.
Probably should find out.
How about some other, Rachel, where are you located?
I am in Macon, Georgia.
Macon, Georgia. Okay. Doug, where are you located?
I am in rural New Hampshire, and I know New Hampshire did expand Medicaid, and it's been kind of a mixed bag up here. I have a behavioral health background, and I know, telepsych is an interesting, that plays a big part in kind of the crisis up here of the opioid epidemic, because we have a shortage of both mental health and substance use providers. So telepsychiatry is something that, I think the state, a lot of people are trying to push to implement, given that there's a lot of rural New Hampshire, but we've had trouble with coverage. It's been a lot of barriers. So I do like that topic.
Yeah.
You guys want to vote on that one, or make that one of them?
I am in favor of the telemedicine idea. I'm not well versed in it, only because we've tried telemedicine and we failed. For one reason is the providers are not on board with it. I am very passionate about it because we have a lot of underserved populations here, and a lot of indigent that either don't have gas money or are just not interested in their own health.
Right.
So I'm definitely a fan of that. I'm not well versed in the policies and reimbursement and stuff behind telemedicine, like I said, because we failed to implement it.
Yeah, it's where I am in Dubois, and I was telling Richard Townsend, I'm the service line director of behavior health for Penn Highlands Healthcare, and I oversee the behavioral health services in 5 hospitals. So we've just barely started using telepsychiatry, and only on a very limited basis because of some of the regulatory hurdles and gaps in policy. I would love to use it on our inpatient units, but the Commonwealth won't allow it. At least we won't get paid for it.
Well, let's put it down.
Yeah.
Let's put down Pennsylvania, since you're familiar in that state, and everybody's
Definitely.
okay with that. I think that's
Okay,
cool.
we can put
Yeah.
that down.
I think that sounds very reasonable.
All right.
All right. I agree.
And I guess why we care about it, you know, healthcare equity issues, underserved populations. You know, I came across a patient just yesterday that really needed an advocate. You know, she was former alcoholic. You know, she obviously had some mental health issues, and she really needed people just they're not really engaged when it comes to their health care. So I guess that could be another reason why we would care about that.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, I would think
Yeah.
I think there are some implications in crisis management too, in like video telepsychiatry for well, in all kinds of ways, but not just scheduled necessarily.
Imagine if rural hospitals had a link to a telepsychiatry provider in their emergency room 24/7. Probably find a lot of ER docs pretty happy about that.
I'm also thinking too, so I work in home care, so a lot of the clients I work with, they either are bedbound, can't leave their home, trach, vent, just to get them to a doctor is a whole production, transportation, scheduling that, just to be able for them to have the telemedicine. They could just kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are options to video chat with a doctor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to have them be able to do that, like with our nurse in the home, to describe the patient's symptoms, order medication, we could pick it up and then it's done. I mean, that would just be so helpful.
You can do it on this right here.
Yeah, it'd be
Talk to
amazing.
your doctor.
It is such a process sometimes.
And they're outside of telepsychiatry and just going into telemedicine. These patients can go to partnering local facilities, and there's actually a provider available to them with like a stethoscope to where they can listen to the heart and the lungs and all of that, and the provider on the other end can hear, so they can actually do exams remotely.
Right. Yeah,
Cool.
it can be pretty sophisticated. But again, I think that from a policy perspective, the infrastructure isn't there.
Mhm.
No, and also a lot of your kind of, I don't mean to be biased or classify people, but a lot of your more veteran providers are really kind of not really open to this new kind of medicine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Would that be policy infrastructure in telepsychiatry or telemedicine? Would that be a really good topic? I mean, to narrow it down some?
I think it has potential. It's one that probably we should debate a little bit more. We're kind of a little bit pressed for time tonight.
Yeah.
But I think it's one that's well worth discussing further, certainly. How about some others? What could be another potential topic for us?
I mean,
The one that I
think,
did the group was looking at how zoning requirements have changed, trying to increase people's access to exercise and activity. My clinical background is as a physical therapist, and it's one of the things I've struggled with my entire career, is trying to find ways to get folks to be more physically active. And Georgia has done a good job of creating some transitions from unused spaces to more public access spaces. So one of the things they've done is they've taken defunct rail lines and converted them over to trail systems inside of urban spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been very successful. and the town that I work in has a really good example of that. And it's really been remarkable to see folks that really can't afford, a membership at a gym or whatever, taking advantage of these green spaces and getting out. And, South Georgia is notorious for having high incidence of obesity and diabetes, and, getting people out and moving is one of the best treatments for all that. And it's been very successful. So,
Yeah. I love that idea. I
like that.
I saw I saw that in the discussion forum. I love that idea. I never thought of it from, kind of the perspective of zoning changes and things like that. That's really interesting. Very much so.
I think that would be a good one that we would have a lot of, like, I don't know what the next steps in this project is, but I feel like we would have a lot of freedom to get creative with that one.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of latitude there. Yeah.
Yep. And
All right, so I'll jot that down.
yeah, and certainly tying that back to diabetes and obesity and that kind of stuff. I mean, the links are definitely there. And that might, we could tie that into addressing the social determinants of health also. I don't know if you guys have had that in previous classes or not. If you haven't, you will.
Right.
But, that's something that is very much in the news lately, and that ties right into that directly, addressing those social determinants of health.
As far as socioeconomic status, culture, all of that.
Yeah, just an overall wellness perspective, and
Public health, all that.
Yes.
And then I guess for that one, we could do Georgia, since that seems to be the best,
Yeah, that's
most experience. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the challenge here is going to be to nail down a state.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've tried to research, state-specific policies, and it's kind of difficult.
Well, that's interesting, because that could also be a focus of of what we do, is how there is such a lack of policy in that area. Possible.
I want to throw one more. I want to throw one out.
Sure.
If it's time. Doug mentioned the opioid crisis in New Hampshire, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Involved with that. I'm working in a treatment facility right now where I'm exposed to lots of that, and I plan on maybe going into that later. But what are some policy changes that have been made there that have been effective, or are there any of late?
Well, so I think New Hampshire is number 2 in deaths related to opiate use, and within the top 5 in poor access to treatment. So we're really hurting. And in the last year, there has been some improvements. I know the Medicaid reimbursement rate for inpatient treatment facilities has almost doubled. It was kind of laughably low for the past 10 years. It had been unchanged. So that's helped. We have more inpatient treatment facilities kind of opening. And then in addition, there's been we have something, it's kind of a hub and spoke model, where the state has worked in collaboration with some hospitals over New Hampshire to create kind of a referral agency out of the hospital. So if somebody presents in the ED with a substance use disorder, maybe they've just overdosed, they can, be referred to this resource and be helped connected to, the appropriate level of care. So that's both of those changes are very promising, but it's, it's been a battle.
I was talking to Richard Nano a little while ago about maybe some changes into who can actually prescribe those medicines, period, on the front line initially. Maybe having to some changes requiring a pain specialist or somebody to be involved, before anybody can receive those.
Yeah.
I've actually heard of New Hampshire in the news regarding the opioid epidemic. So I mean that's a great one as well. I mean, this is a nationwide epidemic.
Certainly.
Okay.
I mean, I think those are a solid 3.
Yeah, I think I agree. I was just going to say, I'm throwing my vote in to talk about the opioid crisis, and let's investigate that further. That probably has more meat on the bone than the other two, to be honest, because it is just such a huge issue nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
from a policy perspective, I'm thinking it's probably pretty fragmented too.
If we can kind of maybe zero in on the initial introduction of these medicines to people, that's interesting right there.
Yes, it is.
I mean, you got drug dealers and illegal and illicit, but
Right.
just going to the doctor with a broken ankle, how many doors does that open?
Mm-hmm.
Doug, can I ask you a question about New Hampshire's policies regarding opioid prescriptions? Do you have any kind of prescription drug monitoring program where you have to check who has prescribed a patient narcotics, when, and as a way to kind of mitigate the overuse of narcotics?
We do. The last position I had was at an outpatient program, and for every new prescription, we did have to kind of query the prescription drug PDMP. So we do have that. It's helpful, but there's definite need for some additional help, especially in New Hampshire. It's just really torn the state up, but glad there are some changes happening.
Okay.
You want to make this New Hampshire specific?
Yeah.
Is the test case sort of, or to figure out maybe some of the reasons why? I have no idea why it would be there so much more prevalent. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, New Hampshire certainly has a framework. They're trying some innovative things.
They are.
That I vote we look into that.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Me too. So for the sake of the homework assignment, I don't know if we all have to individually type up this or if one person just types up.
I have that question also.
I interpreted that to be one of us. Somebody
Right.
did it. Yep.
So the 3, we have to submit 3, but we know which one we're going to focus on. So the opioid epidemic, New Hampshire, and the reasons we want to look into this, I guess, because it's such a prevalent problem.
Right.
I can offer something from a clinical perspective. I'm a former nurse. One thing about opioids is that I don't think the patients really understand what they're getting into, what they're signing up for. The research shows that after about 4 days, patients are dependent on these drugs. Secondly, it alters the pain, sensing pathways in the brain. And it makes patients perceive pain differently, where before they were on the narcotics, the pain may not have seemed as severe. I don't know if that makes sense. So from a patient perspective, I think that's that's something that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
There's going to be a ton of resources here too. So there will be plenty to look at.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, I think those are solid issues, guys. Really, I like them, and really, I think that, from my opinion, the opioid topic, my vote's to sink our teeth into that.
You know, it's kind of in a contrast to Scott, which his the physical therapy versus walking into a clinic and getting opiates. I mean, physical therapy should be here,
Yeah.
and maybe we can hit on that within the paper too. Some alternatives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
And it's interesting now with as endemic as the opioid situation is, it is encouraging folks to come back and reconsider physical therapy as a pain modulating modality instead of, let's prescribe something that's, harmful.
Right.
Another big thing in medicine right now is multimodal analgesia, which is not just prescribing narcotics, but trying to get those maybe muscle relaxers in, the medicines with the anti-inflammatory properties, to where they're getting the same therapeutic outcome, but they're not relying so heavily on the opioids.
Right. And I think Rachel had made an excellent point earlier about the sort of the rewiring of pain reception once they start on the opioids, because you can see it from a therapy standpoint, that we see these patients come in and you can tell pretty quickly which ones have relied heavily on opioids and which ones haven't, just on how they react to different kinds of stimuli.
I think we've got a good team here.
Yeah.
All three topics are brand new to me, so I will do my best to help.
Right.
Do we want to talk about who's most comfortable with document generation and things like that?
I'm happy to volunteer for that unless someone else would rather do it. If you want to entrust me with that, I'd be happy to type something up and forward it to you in plenty of time for you to be able to look it over and approve it before we have to submit it.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There's a way to share in a document. Google Docs, is
Google
that
Docs. Yeah.
right? Also in Word. I don't know if anybody has a preference. Richard and I talked about that.
Yeah, let me address this for a second. I've stressed over the IT aspect of this assignment since I first saw it on Monday. But I went in and created a Google Docs account for us.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Let me give it to you, and I'll give you the email and the password, so that we can all get in there and see it. All right.
Okay.
So our Google Docs account is policy, capital P, Elsus 20.
Policy, I'm sorry, capital P, what?
Policy with a capital P, all the rest lowercase. Policy Elsus
LSUS.
Oh.
20 at gmail.com.
Okay.
And the password is capital HCAD,
All caps.
all caps, HCAD 780 exclamation point.
Let me go back to the email address. I've got capital P for and policy. Then what after the Y?
LSUS
So
to,
just policylsus20@gmail.com.
yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, yep. So
Awesome.
that's where stuff will be. What I'm going to try to do, I'm going to follow that. In the assignment, there's some instructions about how to upload all this. I'm trying to follow that through Google Docs. So that's what I'm going to try to do is upload this video into the Google Docs like this said. I have a YouTube account, so I'll upload it to YouTube and then send the YouTube to Google Docs.
Okay.
That's what
All
I
right.
think. That's what I think I'm going to do. So keep it.
That sounds good.
So I'm doing the write up, so I'll commit to having that to you all tomorrow by midnight. That's okay. And I guess I haven't used Google Docs in a long time. I guess I just type what you told me into the web address and then or go to Google Docs, put that as the username, and then the HCAD 780 as the sign in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right. I will have this uploaded somehow, one way or another, by Sunday at 11 for sure.
Okay.
I'll take care of getting that done.
All right. Awesome.
If I'm having trouble, I'll reach out to the group, but I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Okay. And Rachel, if you need help logging into the Google Voice, the Google Docs, just you can email me or I
Sure.
can try to help you too.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely will. So I guess I will send this out tomorrow by midnight, and I guess I will email the team or message the team forum and say, I need all approvals by what time do you think is fair in order for me to have this uploaded in time?
Sometime Saturday is probably good.
Yeah.
Noon Saturday.
Yeah, that sounds good. That gives them, yeah, that's enough time.
Okay. All right. Well, it's nice
Perfect.
talking to you all.
Nice to meet everybody.
It's really good to meet all you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I was telling Richard Townsend, this is my 9th class in this program.
Almost done.
Wow.
Done. This is the first time I've done anything like this in the program. So it's
Yeah.
a pretty interesting new experience. But guys, I think this went great.
I was nervous, not gonna lie.
Yeah,
It's good to have some help, especially this is my first class. So
it is, and it
Oh.
seems like we
Big
all
deal for me.
we're all like-minded, sort of in our thinking, and that seems to be really good too. So this is good.
Richard, it's nice to see another Georgian in the group. You're right down the street from me.
All right. All right. Well, I imagine that we have to get together next week sometime as well. But we'll cross that bridge maybe Monday, kind of reach out and we'll start getting that set up.
Sounds good. Perfect.
All right.
Good. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good talking to you.
Everybody.
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.